Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water with Joyce Aldrich. Refresh your mind.
Welcome to this evening's edition of A Drink of Water. It's 10 degrees here at CHHA 1610 AM at 8:01, and tonight in studio I'm going to be joined by Goldi Steiner, founder and chair of Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights, and also Ezra Ridgley, director of the Jewish Heritage Project, and he's produced the first ever documentary of the rise of Jewish life and culture in Judea and Samaria, and that was called The Spring of Judea and Samaria. But we're going to be here to discuss the nation-state law that was passed in the Knesset July 19th. Lots and lots to talk about. But first we're going to listen to Blair Packham and a song I really love to play for you. It's called Other Side, and certainly we all need to walk both sides or the other side. Got to pick a side anyway, and may that be a good side. Here's Blair Packham.
People get ready, I might be unsteady, been walking a straight but narrow line. It's time for a change, time to make new arrangements. I wanna go back to the other side of life, the other side. The glass was half empty, surrounded by plenty. I was making up reasons to grouse and gripe. I finally decided to give in and try it. I'd better aspire to the other side of life, the other side. I tried walking alone for some time. I tried to find my way home. All the signs I see keep leading me back to the other side. Day-to-day winners, the saint or the sinner, I watched them parade with a bitter grin. I envied the thunder of hundred wonders in the warmth of the sun on the other side of life, the other side. I tried walking alone for some time. I'm trying to find my way home. All the signs I see keep leading me back to the other side. To the other side. Now I look for good omens and teachable moments. I bet my whole life on a shooting star. I'm happy to say in my own modest way that I seem to have crossed to the other side of life, the other side. I tried walking alone for some time. I'm trying to find my way home. All the signs I see keep leading me back to the other side. To the
And that's Blair Packham, Other Side, from his Unpopular Pop CD. And certainly a wonderful CD. Got to get it. And we're going to be talking this evening with Goldi Steiner. Welcome, Goldi, to A Drink of Water. Can you hear me okay?
Everything okay. Thank you.
Beautiful. You're sounding good. And Ezra Ridgley, you're here as well. Come right up to that mic.
Hi, Joyce.
Oh, great.
Pleasure to be here.
Wonderful to have you here. And we're actually talking about unpopular pop. This is actually a bit of an unpopular topic we're going to be talking about. We're going to be bringing, though, some truth to the whole situation here. Back in July 19th, the Knesset in Israel passed the nation-state bill into law. And they've been, this is something, though, that's not necessarily new, but it's now law. And so I want, first of all, to have you, Ezra, tell our listening audience what that law entails, and then we'll have Goldi talk about why people really can't really be dissenters.
Well, this is the law, and although the law is new, what is talked about in the law really and technically isn't new. But the law itself, because now it's ingrained, enshrined in Jewish law, the following: Israel is the national homeland of the Jewish people in all its basic laws. It declares that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, sets Hebrew as its official language, and the Hebrew calendar as the official calendar of the state, and recognizes Independence Days and days of remembrance, Jewish holidays, and the right of all Israeli residents to preserve their heritage without consideration of religion and nationality.
Now, that made a lot of people crazy in the Knesset, I understand.
But, you know, when you go right back to the Declaration of Independence of Israel,
yes, and
these things are mentioned. It's...
Exactly. And Goldi, can you speak to that, about what the Balfour Declaration and Mandate for Palestine have to say regarding that?
Okay, if you don't mind, I will first give you a definition of what exactly is a nation-state.
Okay.
Okay? So, to define it clearly, a nation-state is a country where a distinct cultural group inhabits a territory, shares the language, customs, national symbols, like Ezra has mentioned, the flag, the anthem, and governs that country or the state.
Right.
So how different is Israel's nation-state bill from any other nation-state?
Any country who has a flag and an anthem and a set of values and laws that people live by. Yeah.
Right, you are.
So when the dissenters come forward, people will say, well, there is no, Israel does not have the right to be Israel. However, there are legal documents to support that, and I know you were going to speak to that.
Most certainly. I will just give you an example, a quote from the Balfour Declaration, which states, quote, "Nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine." But there's no mention anywhere of political rights. And this is the crux of the matter, that people are saying there is discrimination against minorities. However, in the original document of the Balfour Declaration, it never speaks of political rights. Therefore, there is no discrimination against any minorities.
Okay, so it's really a more inclusive, it's a very inclusive declaration then.
Well, it is a very clear declaration giving civil and religious rights, but never mentions anything about political rights. And if you'd like, I can go to another document which clearly defines the nation-state rights of the State of Israel, the Mandate for Palestine,
sure,
which says, whereas recognition has been given to the historical connection of the Jewish people with Palestine and to the ground for reconstituting their national home in that country. Does that make it any clearer?
Sure, it does. And in 1949, that did indeed happen. but still there were dissenters. So now what has happened now on July 19th is that with the new law that's come through, which the nation state bill into law, it now brings all the legal rights into focus, and
Correct.
yeah, it brings it all into focus. And of course, Israel, I believe, 80% of Israel is populated by 8 million Jews, and 20% by Palestinian Israelis.
Right.
Right. So this is why, and it's not that they don't have rights, is what I understand. It's just that Arabic is not it's not like we have here in Canada two official languages, French and English. It's not a two-language state, but rather Hebrew is the major language, and then
That's
Arab is
correct.
given a special
correct.
designation as, yes, you can speak Arabic as well. It has its designation.
I can give you some examples of other countries that are considered nation states, but of course there's always a double standard when it comes to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the examples that I can give you is France,
Mm-hmm.
Portugal, Japan, and interestingly there is also South Korea, there is Iceland. So all these people, there is no claim of any discrimination against those countries, but the double standard stands as it always has against Israel. So its opponents will always find something to complain about, some claim against Israel.
So Ezra, what have you got to say?
Well, as the mandate for Palestine notes, we have the right to reconstitute our nation, and we have a special historic connection to the land of Israel. So what is that historic connection? Let's just go back 2,000 years. The Romans exiled the Jews out of the land, and during the last 2,000 years, no other independent race of people had actually occupied this land as an independent nation. All there was is occupying powers. They would take turns, whether it's the Romans or the Crusaders or the Muslims or the Turks and the British, but the Jewish people remained the only indigenous people for this land. And the thing is that Jewish people never relinquished ownership of the land. And how do we know that? Because, as written literally in the State of Independence, it not only notes that that this was the birthplace of the Jewish nation. This is where we were born as Jews. It's where we first attained statehood. And we actually, in this land, we gave basically the Bible to the world. But it's written to quote part of the independence. It says, after being forcibly exiled from their land, the people kept faith with it throughout their dispersion and never ceased to pray and to hope for their return to it and for the restoration of it and have their political freedom. And this also noted in it is that they have the right, the Jewish people, to be masters in their own land, of their own nation, and have their own sovereign state. And basically, so this nation-state law is basically reiterating what was in the Declaration of Independence. And in 1897, when Herzl sort of rose up and started the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland, he wanted to reconstitute that nation that we lost, 2,000 years earlier, 1,900 years earlier, if you want to be more
And
accurate.
not a religious man, so he,
No,
but a person who just said, saw what Lord Balfour
exactly.
saw.
He recognized the historical connection. That was his connection to the land. We were the Jews. It's our land. We haven't been able to move back into the land for all this time, but now I think I see an opportunity. We should start a movement. So what happens? 1897. What happens?
We're gonna hold. That's a good cliffhanger.
Okay.
We're gonna go to break. We're going to go to break, Ezra. We'll come back with Ezra Ridgley and Goldi Steiner right after this with more discussion about the nation-state bill being passed into law by the Knesset in Israel. With that and some more interesting things to come.
CHHA 1610 AM.
listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM, a drink of water.
If you're just joining us, you listen to A Drink of Water. I'm Joyce Aldridge, and Ezra Ridgley was just talking about what happened in 1897.
Yeah. Just to follow a bit of a timeline, and we can see it's an amazing timeline, which as a religious Jew, this is proof that the promises that were written in the prophets that the Jewish people would return to their land would be unfolding, and actually it did. But it didn't have to be religious people. Herzl, who loved the land and loved his people, in 1897 established the first Zionist Congress. And 20 years later, about 13 years after his death, Britain, it's like the energy that was started there, put it on the radar screen. So in 1917, in World War I, Britain liberated the land from 500 years of Turkish rule.
Yeah,
well,
the Ottoman
since
Turks.
400 years maybe. And it was liberated. In that same year came the Balfour Declaration declaring that the British, that their intent to foster and help the creation of a Jewish state. As Goldi is an expert on that subject.
Yes.
And but then by 1947, 30 years after that, the UN voted to support the creation of a Jewish state. And then a year later, Israel was born. And in 1967, exactly 70 years after the first Zionist Congress, a big blessing from heaven came, and the Jews came into Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem, and this land was liberated. And that's why just a week ago, the government produced this booklet.
Yes, which came in on the heels. Now, Goldi, are you aware of this one, Israel's Right as of Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, this booklet that came out in November 2017, actually, but just to, because I also want to, by the way, Ezra, I want to talk with Goldi soon about the conference she attended and just came back from in Israel. But let's talk about this, where Israel has exclusive rights to Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, which actually now that governments, including the United States, are the first one to start putting their embassies in Jerusalem. Guatemala's going to be doing it, and several other countries are now making...
I think they're following Trump. He's a realist. He realized simple truth. I mean, people have their problems with him, but you know what? In this case, he says he's being real. He's a realist. He sees it is Jewish land, and
So tell us about this new government publication. What it's all about from the Israeli government.
Well, several months ago, it was published by the Jerusalem Affairs and Heritage Ministry, which presents the arguments of some of the world's top jurists refuting the allegations that Israel's presence in Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem violates international law. And the book was titled, and it was given to government leaders around the world back then, Israel's right as of Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, it's their land, and that they took the arguments of all the people and put them in this booklet and handed it out. But ironically, only in 2012, the government, Netanyahu, commissioned Edmund Levy, a former Chief Justice in Israel, to commission an investigation about Israel's legal rights regarding Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem. Okay. And the report came out in 2012, and he had other very notable people with him in the study, and it concluded that Israel are not occupiers in regards to Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria.
But indeed owners, which follows with Dr. Michael Gauthier talks about his thesis and his investigation as an international lawyer. He has been an incredible advocate for the rights of the Jewish people. Goldi, you just came back from Israel on Sunday, and you attended a conference. You want to tell us about that, please, and what the Minister of Justice just announced today?
Before I answer you that question, I will give you an update which came out 1 or 2 days ago, where the Israeli government, after many years, gave permission to build in Hebron, which is a great step forward in the direction of defending our rights. Yeah. And building in that city of the Patriarch by the Israeli government is a Zionist and just a necessary blessed step. So this is the latest that has happened in Israel's Israel giving permission to build in Hebron. I don't know if Ezra, you're aware of this.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, and a report.
I would imagine that
and
you
a report
are.
came out. Okay, I'll let you continue. Just a point, you'll go on. And also a report came out a couple of days before that housing starts in the settlements in Judea and Samaria are up 187% this quarter compared to the previous quarter, and they're calling that the Trump effect because now they don't have America against. You know, they had a lot of pressure to hinder that, and now it's starting to change the facts on the ground there, like Hebron, as you just said.
Mm-hmm. Okay. To respond to your question, Joyce, about the conference that I attended was held by our Israeli partner organization called Im Tirtzu. Mm-hmm. At that conference, Ayelet Shaked, who is the Minister of Justice in Israel, and she's member of the Bayit HaYehudi party, she has stated that it is time to annex Area C, quoting, "The Trump era is a golden opportunity to impose sovereignty. There was never a better opportunity than now to get started," she stressed. Mm-hmm. Okay, and well, this is her position, but the result of that or whatever, the Hebron construction has begun. So I think we're headed in the right direction under the Trump administration. God bless him and keep him alive for many years.
120.
Amen.
Right.
And many would say no, but he's certainly, you know, there are some very good things that he has been very strong for Israel and for Jerusalem and Judea, and you know, and it's all, you know, we're moving forward, and I guess that's really, you know, this is an editorial program, so you know, so I have an opinion about this, and certainly we have to tell the truth about this, because, you know, here, going back to the Americans, the Trump administration has stopped giving, let's say, for instance, money to UNRWA, which was $350 million American dollars a year. Yeah. And so in order to, you know, like our Prime Minister Trudeau and his government has decided, well, you know, we got to pick up the slack somehow, because UNRWA's not getting that money anymore, and they're of course saying, oh, we don't have enough now because we lost the American money. So our Canadian government, which is 10 times, our country's 10 times smaller, 1/10 the size of America, but we're giving $50 million to UNRWA. That was announced in the last couple of days to help Palestinians with schools and housing and everything. But do we know that money's going there? Because the reason the Trump administration withheld it is because they said, no, it's not going to that necessarily. They believe that it's going to terrorist activities, and I hope not. But, you know, this would seem to be what happens. And as we know, there seems to be a bounty on Jewish heads in Israel. You know, if you kill a Jew, you get money. Your family's taken care of, and this is a heinous thing. So,
absolutely,
and that's why Israel is really just saying, you know, all these laws that are being passed, and the rights that are being, you know, that are being brought forward, and saying, look, this we're not occupiers, we're owners of the land, and we have a right to be here. So, you know, this is to protect. You know.
Well, if I may interject here,
sure.
When you said not necessarily going for housing and schooling and what have the UNRWA money
I'm being
goes
kind.
for terror funding and extremist ideology. So millions of dollars, and we need not go any farther than speak about the education system at UNRWA. Mm-hmm. And just today I received a video which really describes
the education of the little tots program.
Sorry?
You mean the children's program?
Well, yes, the children's program, and the incitement starting from the crib. So this is something that I wish Israel emulated and took the example of the importance of education, which is where we are involved, Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights.
Yes.
Our aim is to educate, not from the crib on, unfortunately, but at least at high school level last 2 years of high school level to educate students and adults as well about the rights of Israel, which is a right biblically, historically, and under international law. But unfortunately, the conference I went to, which one of the items on the conference was the legal rights of Israel, very much too few students are aware of Israel's legal rights. They know about the Balfour Declaration, and that's where it stops. So our aim is to convince the government of Israel to officially incorporate the legal rights studies into the curriculum.
So this book that's titled Israel's Right as of Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, compilation of materials, lectures first presented at a Jerusalem Affairs and Heritage Ministry Symposium last year. It says this would be a good start, perhaps, to put that into
this is not a good, it's an excellent book, but it's not a start. The start began 10 years ago when Solomon ben Simra wrote a book called The Jewish People's Right to the Land of Israel.
Excellent
this is
book,
the book that we use as an educational tool that I mentioned to you through our partner organization in Israel as well. We are working now on disseminating the same information here in Canada and worldwide. We're working on it.
It needs to happen. It's 8:28. We're going to go to break one more another time. We have to go to break here, and we'll be back again with Ezra Ridgley and Goldi Steiner, and we're talking about Israel's rights to be, and there's no turning back now. It's now the bill into a law. So we'll be back right after this.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
Okay, we're back. It was a very, very fast break. But, we're talking, it's sometimes it's hard to stand up for yourself, and say, what are my rights? And people in all walks of life, different countries, wherever they're from, we see people standing up for their rights all over the world, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's Black Lives Matters, whether it's, for gender equality, whatever it is. I'm citing those because these are very powerful movements, and they're getting noticed, and they should. And of course, but when Israel, and of course Palestinians are speaking about their rights, but when Israel stands up, it's like all of a sudden everybody in the world turns on Israel. And it's like not everybody in the world turns on all these other groups, but everybody in the world seems to say, oh, no, the apartheid state, all these all kinds of things that are said about Israel, which are absolutely not true. So we try to get the truth out. And here we are on radio, and this is mainstream media, and this is where it has to happen, People got to hear it. So, Goldi, what do you got to say to that? Goldi?
Yes, I'm here.
Thought you went for a cup of tea. You can make me one too, actually. No, but the idea that here, Jews throughout history. Let me put it this way, and Ezra, you probably speak to this as well. Throughout history, Jews have been expelled from one country. You don't think you're really comfortable in England? No. Or in Spain? No. The expulsion in 1492, or from England, or from wherever, and of course Germans were very, very comfortable in Germany. They had wonderful businesses, they had their lives, they had generations of people there, but that didn't stop them from being herded and killed. And this happens all the time. People say, oh, well, people talk about the Holocaust all the time. Well, it's not like it just happened in the 1940s during the Second World War. It's happened for thousands of years, like you were saying, Ezra, when Jews were pushed out 2,000 years ago by the Romans, and or occupied by the Romans. The occupation has always been the other way around. And when Jews have gone to other countries to try and find respite, they've only found that they're only visitors, and that at some point in time, the tables turn, and Jews have to leave, or they have to go underground.
The world doesn't.
So we need a land. We need a place.
Yeah, and you know what? One of the biggest injustices is the world refuses to acknowledge the suffering of Jews who have returned to the land. In the early 1920s, there was so much persecution. Now, for most of the 2,000 years, the reason nobody, for the most part, couldn't establish any kind of civil, large society on this land is because it was basically desolate. It was almost uninhabitable. Even Mark Twain, when he traveled in the 1800s, he said he traveled for days, didn't see a human being. It was so desolate that even the cactus didn't even want to grow.
Yeah.
But when Jews began to return to the land in the 1880s, because of persecution, they come into the land and it began to form economy. They drained the swamps. They planted trees. By the way,
Sure.
Since 1903, when they formed the Jewish National Fund, 240 million trees have been planted in Israel. In fact, Israel is the only country on earth that has more trees than it did 100 years ago. That means in every single country on earth has less trees than it did 100 years ago. Israel's the only one that has more trees. So we're going the reverse direction. But the persecution in those years, in 1929, the Jews of Hebron were massacred. So that was that's why it's very nice, that news about them building in Hebron, because the community came to an end. And then in 1930s, there was more persecution, to the point that in 1936, Britain said, what are we going to do about this? The Arabs, under the British mandate for Palestine, as Goldi mentioned, Britain was supposed to facilitate the creation of a Jewish state. They were the mandating power, and they accepted that responsibility. But what did they do? They did literally the reverse. They began to restrict Jewish immigration, and they allowed Arab immigration into the land. And as Jews formed an economy, more Arabs came in, and basically the floodgates were open, and Arabs were coming into the land where the Jews were being restricted. And that's where most of the Arabs, not all, of Judea and Samaria came from these immigration into the land.
Sure, now, from surrounding countries.
So when they did a commission in 36, because there was so much attack on Jews, they said, what are we going to do? Had an appeal commission, and the conclusion in 37 was, we have to divide it up and give land to the Arabs and let them have their own state. And the thing is that they know what land they chose? Judea and Samaria. And guess who rejected it? The Arabs rejected it. In 1947, when they were offered a state, Israel accepted. They rejected it. And then with the Oslo Accords, when in 2007 they were offered, with Barack was Prime Minister, offered them basically everything that they wanted. They rejected it because this has never been about the creation of an Arab state. It's been about the decimation of the Jewish state.
And of Israeli people, of the Jewish people.
Exactly. So,
which has been historically what has happened. I mean, when people, you ask people, how many Jews do you think there are on the planet? We're not supposed to count how many, but really there are like 15 million Jews on the planet, and 8 million live in Israel, and more are making what they call aliyah, moving back to Israel. So, people actually should be happy. Jews are leaving the country, going back to Israel, and the ones who are in the diaspora, we should have some sort of governance here, and like we were talking about before the program, some say in what happens as well in Israel, so that we have a feeling of a homeland and a place, that, I mean, as much as I love Canada, I was born here, my family, we go back generations, but you know what? It's not that easy for Jews. Goldi.
Joseph, yes, you were asking, I'm going to turn back to your question of anti-Semitism.
Oh, yes.
And I just heard part of a speech made by Rabbi Sachs in the House of Lords in London.
The chief rabbi for England,
he talks about, the oldest hatred being anti-Semitism. And he said, why did anti-Semitism spread as wide as it did nowadays in the 20th century? He said, and the answer, he said, because nobody stopped it. And I think that's an excellent reply. We don't know where it started, and we don't know the reason for it, but we know it spreads like wildfire because nobody stops it. And whether it's jealousy, whether it's rivalry, we don't know. There is no way to determine the reason for anti-Semitism. But with the blood libels going back and the the quote from the elders of Zion, I mean, it's just been spreading and spreading, and nobody stops it. Everybody latches on to this horrible claim against Israelis, with more libels coming out by the day.
And using
go figure.
Zionism as like it's a dirty word or something, like to be a Zionist is and to other Jews, Zionism is considered a bad word, like there are people who don't want to,
with anti-Zionism is the new expression for anti-Semitism, but it's really one and the same.
Sure it is.
Yeah. I will direct you to a wonderful blast that came out today by Mossad organizations.
Oh, yes.
It's the Freedom Foundation, and it really defines the problem with, I'm going back now to the UNRWA funding, and which also includes the Palestinian Authority textbooks, and it shows a clip, I think it's about a 5-minute YouTube that shows, I think you know about the children, how they're being incited.
Yes,
and I would
that's what I was referring to before.
To watch that blast, go to the website of Mossad organization, mossad.org, and you will find a wonderful item there which will inform people of what really goes on.
It's really shocking, actually. I mean, how many people in the world, and say in the world, whether Chinese or Korean or European or American or South American, how many people send their little kids to school to learn how to do guerrilla warfare?
Well,
how many? I want to know. I don't think so. I don't, who does that?
But it catches like fire. UNRWA has, I believe it has 500, Ezra, you might know better the numbers, 550,000 students attend UNRWA schools. Is that a correct number?
If you're including maybe outside of Israel, but like inside of Israel, there's, I believe, 13 refugee camps. And, there's tens of thousands for sure, maybe hundreds of thousands. But the thing is, these camps are actually a crime against humanity supported by the UN, who has supported them, and even America, but Trump has stopped this, because they are educating the kids in terror to hate Israel. There can never be a peace agreement. But the thing is, these are Arabs, and they are Arabs. So how can you have your own people in a refugee camp in your own nation? It doesn't exist anywhere on the planet Earth that one race of people keeps their own race of people, but it's only for political reasons, and so that they can have these camps in the UN, in their books. They do nothing to prevent the education of these children in hate and terror and all that. So they come in poverty. They have no rights among their own people, and this is a crime against humanity supported by the UN.
We have to support. Actually, in that way, we need to help those Palestinian refugees, in quotes, because they really do need help because they're being used as pawns.
I mean, the UNRWA is spread all over Syria, Jordan,
Lebanon.
It's not. I'm not speaking only of the Israelis.
In Lebanon too. Yeah, it's true.
So-called refugees, which really, in reality, they are not. They do not qualify as refugees.
But they're called that, and they're supported
by the so-called civilized European nations. Go figure.
Well, just think about it. When the Oslo Accord came about, Yasser Arafat in 1963, he became leader of the PLO. What is the PLO? It was created by the Arab League with the mission of destroying the state of Israel. But when Oslo came around, and they wanted to, and the powers at work put so much pressure on the Israeli government to make a peace agreement and give autonomy, who did they choose? The man that was the worst international terrorist at the time, Yasser Arafat, and he's the one who came to the land of Israel, and now he was given all those schools. So that's a crime against humanity, basically committed by a united world for the same cause. Took the worst guy, whom they know, and instantly he began to educate in the school systems and give honor to terrorists. And what happened is, terrorism went up 1,000-fold.
Ezra, don't badmouth Arafat. After all, he's the winner of the
Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay, so a little bit of respect for that.
Yes, actually it's true. He Ezra, I'll have to turn your mic off. No. Yes, and Obama was also given a Nobel Peace Prize, 6 months in. We don't know for what yet; it's still a mystery. But in that we won't go there either. So, that's just craziness. But you know who did get a Nobel Peace Prize is our beautiful Nadia Murad, the Yazidi girl. And you know, I'm just gonna digress a little bit. Come out of the Israeli thing, and there we have another people who are facing genocide, the Yazidi people, and we know how horribly persecuted they still are, and being held as slaves by ISIS, which still is alive and thriving, and selling people on the internet, and it's just heinous. And now we have people in Turkey, Muhammad Ali, not the fighter, who wants to come back to Canada with his wife and 2 children that he had in Syria while he was an ISIS fighter, and who has proudly said that he was, playing soccer with heads that had been severed from bodies. Maybe he's a team player, I don't know, but this is just not a good thing. This is not. Yet this is a kind of upside down world we live in. People are saying, well, we don't know if we can bring him back, and we don't have the laws to really hold them into jail, and they could just come back and then just flow right into Toronto society or wherever. But that's okay. But what Israel, letting a country have their rights, and they're not hurting people. People are not abused in Israel.
No, actually,
very much on the contrary.
When
it's the only democratic country in the Middle East, and yet it is being turned upside down. The whole notion of Israel and its war crimes and what have you is being turned upside down.
Like the BDS movement is hurting the Arabs. Like Israel's not an anti-Arab country.
No.
We're not anti-Arab. They're human beings. They're created in the image of God.
Absolutely.
Now, when the BDS wanted to stop the goods made in Judea and Samaria and have boycotts, who did they hurt? They hurt the Arabs. If you just take SodaStream as an example, in Ma'ale Adumim, just outside of Jerusalem, just east of Jerusalem, SodaStream had hundreds or maybe 1,000 Arab workers. You know what they would do? They would send beautiful air-conditioned buses into Ramallah, pick the Arabs up. They came and worked. They made Western wages, worked in a Western clean factory, and they had a beautiful living.
Yeah.
And they would take them home at night. And they treated them with so much respect. That's what Israelis do. That's what Jews do. But they all lost their jobs because SodaStream was forced out of Judea and Samaria, out of across the green line, so to speak. And now they had to move down to Beersheba. And all those Arabs, they lost their jobs. And all over the industrial zones in like the Barkin industrial zone where there was recently a terror attack.
Exactly. I'm going to say
4,000 Arabs worked there, and they at different jobs. They're blessed.
They're shooting themselves in the foot, literally.
Yeah.
It's 8:45. We're going to go to a break and come back right after this and right after these messages.
Radio Voces Latinas. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at CHHA 1610 AM.
CHHA 1610 AM. Radio Voces Latinas. More voices 24 hours through. Programming continues.
You are listening to Radio Voces Latinas, 1610 AM. A drink of water.
Don't number us, don't call our name when you want someone else to bear the blame. Don't call our name above the damning crowd. Sometimes you cry it much too long and loud. When trouble comes, no place to turn. You look at us and your heart burn. Don't number us, don't call our name when you want someone else to blame. You look at us and can't disguise the yellow stars that filled your father's eyes. You can only see what you were taught to see. Gentile and Jew. We both began in that famed garden too. Although our paths took us down separate ways, we're sure to meet again at the end of days. We'll look each other in the eye, lion and lamb both side by side. Our God's the same, Gentile and Jew. We both began in the garden too. Oh, Israel has a story to tell, one of love and lament. We chose our fate to teach love and not hate, to build a better world to come. Not just for us, but for everyone. Not just for us, but for
And that's a song called Don't Number Us, and that's one of your favorite songs, right, Goldi?
Absolutely, still brings tears to my eyes. It's unbelievably beautiful. I wish you could. Are we on the air?
Yes, we're on the air, yeah.
Oh, okay,
We're
then.
live. We're live. Live radio.
Okay.
Isn't it wonderful?
All right.
No, thank you very much. No, and this is the whole thing. Like Salim Mansour said on one of the programs that I had him as a guest. He said it's time for people to wake up and smell the coffee about Israel. We're not the enemy. Not the enemy at all, but it's just unbelievable how Hitler didn't like the morality aspect. He really wanted a hedonistic whatever society, and maybe I don't know what it is. Maybe when you bring the Bible to the world, maybe that's a problem. It's just too hard for people to take. I don't know.
A lot of people don't know that if you go to, let's say, Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, you'll see that a lot of Arab doctors. People aren't realize that the respect and the equal rights that they have.
Heads of hospitals. Heads of hospitals. Absolutely.
Go to Hebrew University. The students, a lot of students there are Arab. I think it's 20%. Go to Haifa, and you'll see the large Arab population that are totally in sync with the Jews. It's very amazing. It's
and
an
ask them if
example
they
to
want
the
to live
world.
anywhere else.
Yeah, it's an
they don't
example
want
to
to live
the
anywhere
world.
else. They love it there.
But there's powers.
May I end on a more optimistic note?
Yes, I would love it.
When you finish, Ezra, I want to add
go.
something.
Want to hear some more optimistic things?
Go ahead, Goldi.
What I want to say on an upscale note that basically, very slowly, but that is the tide is turning. We have Trump, we had Haley, and Israel is making sort of friends with the surrounding Arab states, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. So there is a change, and more importantly, there is a change for the better as well as for the worse, but let's talk about the better part of it, that education is going to be spread. We're going to work very hard to spread the rights of Israel to the general public in Israel, youth and adults alike. So let us hope for a better future, slowly but surely.
And if they want to go to the website for Israel's Legal Rights, that's israelslegalrights.org. So, and that's you are the founder and chair of that organization, Goldi. So certainly go there.
Yes, co-chair with Irving Weisdorf.
Ah, yes. Okay.
And you know what, Goldi, just at a point, in this Knesset vote for the nation-state law, they only won by, it was 62. That means they only won by 2 votes. And I know the activities that you've been doing over the last several years to promote the Jewish legal aspect may have had a penetrating effect in the Knesset, because I know that you've met Knesset members, and your activities may have actually turned the tide so that this law would have come into being. And
Well,
so thank you for the great work.
I wish it were so,
for
and
sure, for sure. I'm sure you had enough influence because you were meeting with members and giving Solomon's book to them, and
Yes.
and you were doing a lot of activities.
And continue
and
to.
I think that was the tide. You know, only by two this thing passed.
Yeah.
So just think about it.
Well,
you
we got
know,
about
and-
we got about 3 minutes
we
before
do
the end.
what we can, and by now thousands and thousands of books have been distributed among university students, whom we ask with all our hearts to spread the word and educate themselves and then educate others. And we hope that this will take effect in the near future.
Yeah.
Like I said, the message I left with the students when I was at the conference was that they are the future, they are the future leaders,
Okay.
the future electorate, and one of them in the not too distant future
We
will
have
be
like about
Prime
2
Minister
minutes.
of Israel, who will proudly declare that Israel is ours, we are not occupiers.
That's right.
Amen.
That's
Yes,
right. So,
absolutely.
Ezra, your website is?
Oh, the JewishHeritageProject.com. Basically, it's possibly the foremost website in the English world, but maybe even Hebrew, that focuses on the rise of Jewish life and culture in Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem. And it will take you through all Judea and Samaria into the different communities, even into East Jerusalem, the Old City, and all over the place. And you'll see that the wonderful communities that are being built, the very things that you will never see on TV, because nobody will show it to you on the news. What is Jewish life like in Judea and Samaria? So I took upon myself to visit these communities, video them, and did a couple of movies, and there's about 60 videos altogether, and it will open the door for you. Feel free to share them on your
Take a mini vacation
Facebook page.
to Israel through
Yes.
them.
Yes.
That's a beautiful
There's
idea.
a lot of tourism going in these communities
A
now.
lot of tourism. And so we sign off with Ezra Ridgley and Goldi Steiner. And thank you so much for joining me this evening on A Drink of Water.
Thank you,
It's
Joyce.
been an absolute joy. And you know, sometimes it's hard to talk about these things, but they have to be talked about. We can't stay stumm, you know? Can't.
Thank you so much, Joyce. You've done a great job, and you keep doing a great job by disseminating the good side of our rights, and let's hope it will bear fruit in the near future.
Amen.
You're
Amen.
amazing, Joyce.
For a better world.
Not just for us, but for everyone.
Yes.
Amen.
Just
Because
for
peace will come to the whole world
everyone.
eventually. 'Cause
Everyone.
That is the will of God, and that we all get along together.
That's it. So we'll go out now and drink water. And next week I've got David Kaufman from Jack's. We're going to be talking about the new marijuana legislation. So thank you very much for joining us, to all our listeners. Have a wonderful
And
week.
thank you, Joyce.